All right, on today's video, we will be discussing Reiki, and there's some ideas out there that Reiki might not be Christian or maybe even satanic. So my good friend Quinn, who is a Reiki Grandmaster, has joined me for this conversation. He's had it many times with people who happen to be Christian faith and are maybe interested in whether it's evil or because they might not understand it or might not have researched it too much other than Google. So let's bring in my friend and say hi to him. Welcome, Quinn.
Hi, Mark. Thank you for having me on your show. And hello, everyone. I humbly introduce myself. As Mark said, my name is Quinn. My last name is Straza. To give you some backstory, my father just recently passed away at 93 years old. In his life, he was given up for dead 19 times. In those experiences, he had 4 near-death experiences. Where it was interesting is in the second time that he had his experience, he really dove into understanding spiritual readings, not religion, as spiritual readings, as my good friend Mark knows. It's something that all of us could resonate with if we're willing to look within and be accountable and research. Religion is more or less what man takes from different spiritual paths and chooses what he likes or doesn't like to suit how he or she wants to live. Just going back to the story, my father was so grateful to what we understand to be God, sparing his life, giving his life. He prayed. This is exactly what he told me, that he was very grateful that he had already 2 daughters and a son, but he wanted to give something back to God for sparing his life twice. And he says, the only thing I could ever give you is not material, money, objects, is possibly another child. If you were willing to help us bear another child, whether it's male or female, being healthy to serve you. And lo and behold, whatever time frame that was, after the second accident, my father was given up for dead a 3rd time, and literally Christ came to him again and said, you and your wife will bear a son in 10 years that will do miracles and wonders in my name. And I was born in 1970. And my father kept telling me this since a young child, taught me how to connect to praying, understanding interpretation that would be universal to all cultures, of just common sense and how it could be applied spiritually. And so what happened was I started my practice with reflexology because I didn't know how I was going to introduce of having this ability. My father told me that I was born with the ability of healing with my hands. Now, as my good friend mentioned to you, I am known as a title. Unfortunately, the world looks at titles as a Reiki Grandmaster. The unfortunate thing is a lot of Christians aren't told to investigate, but anything in the world can be translated to our language, whatever that is. When the word Reiki came to North America, you would be surprised, as a lot of people don't even know what that means. They just know that it was a word because a Japanese man had connected to God. And I'll get to that in a bit. But the word Reiki, Rei means God, and Ki means spirit or energy. So Dr. Yasui, who is a Japanese man, had gave credit to God for the ability of healing. Just to give you a little bit more knowledge, Dr. Yasui was a Japanese man who loved his community. He was born into a very wealthy family. He wanted to help the suffering, the poor. He actually was in charge of an orphanage of boys. So he actually went to the Buddhist monks and asked for the ability of healing, of laying of hands. And they said, we cannot tell you, as we will go mute. Now, if we are Christians that have interest or have remembered the story, Zacharias was the father of John the Baptist. The story is that an angel came onto him. Zacharias was a great prophet of God, but he was of old age, like about 100 years old, and they had been trying to have children. Now, the understanding was an angel said that you and your wife will bear a son, and his name is John, and he'll baptize the Messiah. But with Zacharias, he kind of froze or got nervous, and he says, but I'm of old age. And the angel said, with your doubt, you yourself will go mute. until the day your son is born, so there'll be no confusion. So if we look at the synchronicity of that, the same spirit is amongst all cultures, but using similar, say, symbols or signs or messages. So with that, when Christ was 12 years old, if one was to look in the Bible and try to understand it, he was preaching amongst the synagogue at 12 years old, and the elders were marveled at his knowledge as he claimed to be the Son of God. But then the years that were missing, people questioned what had happened. If one was interested, as yourself looking at this video, you can go to BBC, Christ was a Buddhist. It's not so much that he was a Buddhist, but that's what happened. Is there was a Russian man in the 1800s that wanted to prove or find out what happened to the lost years of Christ. There were 16 years missing. And he had taken a translator and asked what had happened, if they know of anything or have any records of anything. And they had said that there's 2 golden books that relate back to that time, that there was a man that they called Issa that claimed to be the Son of God, and the Dalai Lama was amazed at his knowledge and claimed that he must have. The word Issa translates as the Son of God. Now, if we go back to parts of Scripture, when there were miracles, there was times that Christ had said, "Go tell no man what happened here today. Go to the church and make an offering according to the Mosaic Law," because God wanted, or Jesus wanted them to be interested in coming themselves and asking the story. And so if we look at that, here we have a culture across the world. Now, if we do remember, it said in Scripture that the disciples said that Christ himself would appear and disappear, meaning he could transport himself. So if he was the Son of God, he could do that at any time once connected. It isn't that he traveled 2,000 miles or 3,000 miles by foot. He could instantly be there because of consciousness, if we're willing to look at that. So he saw peace with these people, that all they wanted to do is help their own and anybody else. He taught them how to lay hands and the secret, but they were asked not to say anything, as man would not understand in other cultures, because a lot of cultures want to have power or have all the answers. That's not how God works. In Scripture, it says, God says, "I work in mysterious ways. No man knows my ways or how I operate until that miracle takes place." And that's a personal experience. Now, for myself, for those that don't understand other cultures, we've been always told that it's satanical or it's not of God. Well, where there's love, there's God. You cannot, or myself cannot, deny love in other cultures where people have different titles. The medicine man, medicine woman, whatever it is, the shaman, they were chosen with a gift to connect to the same consciousness to give peace of mind, body, and soul through mental, emotional, and physical healing. So we don't have to put a label on it to start. It depends on where we want to find an answer for hope. And that's how we're brought to people. And I've been humbled where my father had told me that don't look at traditional education, as the doors will close. And that's exactly what happened. Now, within the world, we look at academics. I'm only saying this with humility. I had the grades. I was on the honor roll. I graduated with 89%, but that avenue didn't open up for me. All the doors had closed. That will be shared another time, if need be. Once I surrendered that I had this gift that I was born with and willing to find a way to use it, this is where the word Reiki or therapy, as I can't do God. Rei means God, Ki means spirit. I can't do either, but I can connect to it. So the art of healing that we're doing is actually laying on of hands, as in Scripture. But that doesn't mean miracles don't happen in other cultures, because if the heart and the mind and soul is in conjunction and in connection with spirit, spirit will honor that, because we're sacrificing ourselves to be the vessel that God can work through. That's why he created us, was to work through us, to give hope through experience and suffering and pain. And some are used as healers. One of my famous quotes for myself that I use, a healer's power is it's only as strong as his mental, emotional, and physical suffering, as he can use that to understand the patient. It's okay saying, I'm sorry that you're suffering. But if you have an intimate relationship that this person feels comfortable in your space, and I can say, I've had that experience, and I'm going to help you get a healing of it as best as I can, then one or you can feel more comfortable in my space. And with humility, I've been doing this now, my work full time since 2006. I've been in business for 20 years. I give all of myself, of my being, that I'm worthy enough to be a vessel that, if we use the term God or source, would be willing to work through me. And I've been blessed to see the blind get their sight back, the deaf get their hearing, the lame walk, cancers. I've worked with 60 some different forms of cancers, and over half of those are solely with my services only, or in conjunction with modern medicine, because we can work together. It's about knowledge and cooperation, not ego, because our interest should be the interest of the healing of the client, that they have peace of mind, that they got support of knowledge, wherever that comes from, and that we put our heart in, because of our passion of what we want to do for our work at the end, where we get paid for our service. But the first concern is you as the patient. So in scripture, where people may say, well, this is not of God, how can it not? I've devoted my whole life, not depending on what's a traditional job. And I only say this because of what our society says, proper grammar. I give of myself every day at the mercy who needs my services, that I'm worthy enough that what you need will come through me if you're willing to give me the time, as you have experienced with other medical professionals that know, because of statistics, what is needed to get you there. I use that same scale. And I've been blessed to do this full time. God meets my needs, yet sometimes it's hard, because if one's open to energy, there's negative energy out there. And if we're talking about the Christian faith, look at, he was the most pure man that walked the earth, being the Son of God, and he was crucified. They said in the book of Acts, he did nothing but good, but they killed him. So that negative energy does want to attack us as healers, because the negative energy doesn't want you or a family member or a friend to have hope. So our life is going to be hard. It looks good on the outside, but to connect, unless you learn how we do this in other forms or the same form, you cannot see the physical, what's taking place, but you can feel it, and then you get the result according to your journey of a complete healing, or 30% healing, 40%. And like I said, I've been blessed. If people look at credentials, I've had many interviews with humility of sharing the story, but recently, in the last little while, I was recognized, unknowing to me, that I was chosen as the #1 Reiki Grandmaster in North America. What happened was, there was a radio station out of New York City called CUTV News. They're affiliated with NBC News. They did research on 6 therapists North America. I was one of them. For 1 year, they checked our background and our successes with clients. And they had called me, and they're affiliated with NBC News. And now they want to fly me out to New York City to do an international story on my life. And that's only with humility that I share this, to give you hope worldwide. I've also done distant healing through meditation, of only knowing the person's name. And the spirit has healed them as far as Pakistan. So
I think we'll talk about that on another
that'll be another show
episode, when we talk about actual Reiki. But one thing that I feel is important, that people who are going to be concerned about, say a Christian person is interested in your services, and they're concerned about this Reiki. Is it evil? Can you explain the process that you go through while you are performing Reiki? Just so people can actually see what's involved, and they can hopefully they've got a level of discernment themselves, that they can start to see and understand what you're relying on.
Okay, now actually you've brought up a good point, which I was going to get to, but I'm glad you brought it up, because I'll even give you better than this. They can even research it themselves if they're willing to look.
The thing about researching that I've found is there's a lot of biased, maybe I don't want to say a lot, and I don't want to affirm this necessarily, but I've seen in certain sects, certain groups, that there seems to be some misinformation regarding empowering practices such as this. So
right. Okay, well, I'll give you the background on Dr. Yasui. So this is where the Christians will maybe have a little bit more understanding or faith, if I may say. Dr. Yasui, when he was in charge of an orphanage, he was also trying to teach them about, things will work out. We work together, we help each other. But he had also mentioned to them that he wanted to find, if I may use the term, a true spiritual path that could explain itself with multiple people with the same experience. Now, with humility of saying this, for myself, I look at other cultures and I've learned things, and I know that ancient scribes or Sanskrits all say pretty much the same thing. So where I'm going with this is, he actually heard about Christianity, Dr. Yasui. He came to Chicago in the late 1800s, and he was amazed that one who claimed to be the Son of God and also had 13 followers, 12 disciples, and a female, Mary, all telling the same story. And he was very intrigued with that. So what he had done on his own, as he converted from Buddhism to Christianity. Now, he still used techniques from the Buddhists for healing, but that was all shown to them, as I said, that they had learned from the past, when one believed that Christ had went to Asia and taught them how to do this. So he actually converted from Buddhism to Christianity, and he started teaching the Bible in the orphanage. So a little boy, age 7, as in scripture, it says, come on to the Lord as a child. This 7-year-old little boy said, why don't you just ask God to work through your hands? So that evening, an inner voice had told him to go to Horse Saddle Mountain, which the same mountain that the Buddhist monks told him, if you're supposed to be enlightened or will be enlightened, you'll find out. Fast for 21 days. He did that, and on the 21st day, a white light came and knocked him in the third eye, knocked him unconscious, and in that time, it spoke to him in his language, gave him 7 symbols of communication because of his language, and showed him how to lay hands. So right there is the evidence that if Christians need, where this information is shared, it's in a book called Empower Your Life with Reiki. Empower Your Life with Reiki. And it's written by Richard Ellis, that gives the backstory of Dr. Yasui. So now, as we know, in Christianity, God came for those that say were lost or hurt. He picked ordinary men and women, and that means we're all able to transform if we're interested in that spiritual connection and possible a higher purpose to help our fellow man or family or whomever. Now, you're talking about energy and how it works. Well, if I may say, when I have people come, the actual term is laying on of hands. So I ask people if I may use that technique and how this works. Now, I'm going to try to break this down so you understand, say, a medical part. Now, we've been shared information that when we get sick, we're told that our body, and we feel it, triggers a response with heat, which is a fever, to destroy a sickness, if it's capable of doing that. And what we are doing naturally is meditating or praying to Source or God to find us worthy to do that. And what happens is our hands get warm, and in scripture and in ancient writings, fire or heat has a dual function. The sun gives life to plants to grow, to feed us, and yet heat or fire also destroys or purifies. As we, in certain time frames of history, they used to burn the bodies in the street for pestilence and disease. Well, it has a dual function. So as I meditate while you or someone's on my table, wherever there's stress in the mental or emotional or physical body, without people telling me what's going on, I can sense that there's a problem in the systems of the body. So I may not be able to label each one specifically because there's so many ailments out there. But through my experience, spirit is never wrong telling me, ask them if they have a concern in the stomach or the bowels or, intestines, or do they suffer with migraines? And
Quinn, could I touch on something briefly here?
Yes, you may. Yes, you
So
may.
you just mentioned spirit tells you, or previously you said you pray to God or source. Can you clarify when you say God or source or spirit, do you mean the same thing in all of them, or are those three different entities? Okay.
Yes.
Because some people who might not understand these things might think, okay, that source thing, they don't talk about that in the Bible. That's got to be the Antichrist. Or when you say spirit, so
Right.
I want to bring this up for clarity's sake, that you are intending the exact, all three: God is source, God is spirit, God is God. All three of those, you're just connecting. It's not three different things. It's a different name or a different way to describe God, I guess.
Exactly. It's a description that people, as I use the term, say baby steps, because sometimes when there's discussion, depending on whether you know somebody or don't, you don't want to say too much too fast. And some people feel comfortable saying God. Some people feel comfortable saying spirit.
Oh, this is true.
And some people feel more comfortable just saying source. That's a comfortability within one. But when the mind and body and soul are in sync, spirit, God, or source will not be offended, as you already are connecting with all three with intention and sincerity. So there's
Well put. Hey, a curious thing to point out is how one person, maybe Christian influenced, their ego will be maybe put off and offended or scared or become fearful if you say source. But if somebody's maybe an atheist, they would have that reaction too if you used God. So it's curious how if the wrong word to the wrong person excites and energizes that person's egoistic response. So a person like Quinn, who's doing the best that he can and does an amazing, incredible job. Imagine all of the people, the different types of people he works with, that he has to explain these processes and give his understanding and try and basically put their mind at ease when they've got different belief systems that are, not necessarily based on being informed, but what they've been a product of their environment and society and culture and that type of stuff. So that's like your part-time job, is just explaining this to people that you're helping.
Well, yeah, no. And you know what? I'll give an example with all respect to, say, Christians that are possibly willing to hear us speak. And I'll give a prime example to give hope. And this is with innocence. This isn't to make anybody feel uncomfortable, but this is where throughout history we've been told, but it hasn't been clear. But Christ was clear as a person to share information. But it's not taught detail. And there's so much importance to detail, because then people are misled. Now, everybody knows what they believe to be the Good Samaritan story. Now, Samaria is believed to be the oldest language in history. Now, there is the story of the Good Samaritan. The idea was, or the understanding was, is that there was a man who was robbed and left by the side of the road and left for dead. Ironically, there was a high priest of the time, a rabbi, and also a civil servant, like a police officer or a soldier, that was supposed to protect the people. Now, it says that every one of those people walked by the man who was robbed and left for dead. But yet on a daily living and in involvement with society, they prided themselves to be connected to God, spirit, or source, or authority, as the police officer or soldier. And it's amazing that they didn't do what they were supposed to do, but yet they talked about it every day. So in one sense, you could say they were hypocritical or scared to apply what they knew, but yet they're preaching or getting paid for a service, as it says, protect and serve, as the soldier or police officer. Ironically, a man from Samaria. Now, if we know the history, the Jewish culture and the Sumerians fought throughout history, and let's use the word, didn't like each other, but a stronger term. And so ironically, this Sumerian saw this man and picked him up and took him to an inn and said to the innkeeper, I will pay for all his care. I have to leave for 1 year. I give you what I have, and I'll come back and pay the rest. Well, when Christ came, the high priest says, well, who are our neighbors? Who are our friends? Jesus says, we all are. And Jesus says, well, who helped the man? And he says, well, the Samaritan. He says, well, then who did God's work as you claim to be a representative of a man on the cloth? Yet you left the man and walked by. And he says, well, the Samaritan did the work. He says, well, then go do likewise. Everybody's our friend, whether it's across the street, right beside you, or across the world. Now, get this. Not once did it ever mention of any belief system or spiritual connection that that man had. He did what was upon his heart that he'd want done for him.
Yeah, or religion.
Is that
right? Yeah.
the origin? Now, isn't that the golden rule? Do unto others as you want done to you. If we were intelligent enough as a species, or would listen to that, we wouldn't have been given 10 commandments. But because of ego and born into stature or status, then we feel privileged to talk and act and respond because we don't know any better, but we feel that we have the right to impose that. But what happens is sometimes then a situation will humble you, because you know what? If I fell outside my house, not the first thing I ask a person is what your belief system is. I'm going to say thank you for helping me. So for us as Christians that keep putting a label and a label and a label and being negative, just look at how the person's responding in a compassionate way in a time you need help. And that's all we need to do.
Yes, this is where discernment comes in, and
yes,
discernment is something that's developed, and you begin to, what discernment is you start to be able to determine, hey, is this love or is this lack of love? Right. And I think anybody I've read your testimonials, I'm very familiar with some of the stuff you're doing, right, Quinn? So I think it's pretty clear that you're in alignment with the love and the consideration and the compassion, and all anybody has to do is read your testimonials on your Facebook page, and they can see by the people you've helped the type of energy you're bringing. And it is that Jesus energy. I'm not comparing, and I'm not trying to claim that Quinn is Jesus, but when you understand spirituality, you understand that those are the attributes you develop when you are connected and when you begin to surrender this ego.
Right. And that's where, if I may say, with humility, with myself, at the time my father told me this, at a young age, he first told me this, that I remember was at age 7. And then I remember, if I may say, getting on my knees when I was 10 years old and praying and said, I truly believe what my father is saying. I give my life now. Just help me through my journey. And with that, it definitely hasn't been easy, but I wouldn't trade it for the world, because my heart, the best I can offer, in any way I can help, I try to help people. And that's just me. But obviously you got to set limitations so you don't get taken advantage of. But now the funny thing is, if I may say, and this is not ego, when people say a young boy wants to be a famous guitar player or in a band, he wants to replicate that person he likes best or she likes best. So for me, if I could have all that knowledge of all the people through history that showed that love and compassion, and there was healing of mental or emotional experience for each individual, that's what I'm striving for. And for myself, for people believing and possibly understanding that Christ did walk this earth, that's who I'm trying to represent, in a sense of walking that fine line as best I can. But I'll never be that. But for what he is teaching, I'm doing my best daily to live that and be an example of that. And so
it's actually neat you mentioned that, because this might just offer a little bit more validation. When I took training from Quinn to learn this, I recall Quinn actually saying, you close your eyes, and when your hands are there and you envision that it's Christ coming in there and putting his hands there there with you. You know what I mean? Or these
Yes.
become your hands become Christ's. Like it was very clear when I was taking my training that there was nothing unchristian about it. Quinn, I think we're gonna wrap it up for there, just due to time. I don't want to cut you off mid thought, but I want to. You know what? When we have these discussions, I always get reminded how powerful it is when you speak, because you have that Christian influence and that Christian study and understanding that I don't have at that depth. You just hit the nails. Like your words have so much weight, and it was just magnificent. Like you did such a wonderful job. And I think it was just a blessing, and I'm so thankful for you taking some time and hanging out with me, buddy.
Well, it's truly my pleasure. And I know we're short of time, but I just want to be clear to people, as you had mentioned, when I do this, if there's a secret, all the secret is I surrender that I'm worthy of being a vessel every day, that God will work through my hands through his son, Jesus Christ. And like Mark said, I visualize, as soon as I'm there, I visualize the Spirit of God or Christ stepping out of me and working on you or a client. And that's where the energy, Mark can testify to this, my hands get very warm, which help dissipate or break down the sickness. And that's the Spirit, because the Spirit's like fire, which purifies and heals.
And it's not like your hands just get warm. They get unnaturally warm. Like some would say hot. Like it's not like oh the hands are like, hey, they got some happy circulation going on. It's not like that. It's like there's a serious amount of heat. All right, buddy. Sorry, go ahead. Do you want
my hands, just as an example, I had a friend who had a meter to read the heat. My hands, in the form of heat, have reached the level of 250 to 300 degrees, but it's a controlled sense of energy within the body where it destroys the sickness, but it doesn't burn the client. And it's quite humbling. I'll put it that way.
Wow. Hey, that's why you've never told me that before.
Yeah.
Before I forget, I'm going to put my friend Quinn's information if you're inspired to see him for some treatment. He does distance Reiki as well, which if you have questions, if you think can this be helped or not, you can contact him. I'm sure he's willing to give you some information.
Sure.
Because most people that will be viewing this obviously won't be in our city, right, Quinn? So
right. Yeah. No, that'd be great. That'll be another discussion. And just to give hope, just that last little bit, I've been doing distant healings since 2010, and the furthest I've ever done, which I have testimonials of, is as far as Pakistan. And it's all with humility that I share. I do get excited, so it's only passion and love for what I do and serving God's people. And that's us as a civilization. With humility, I give all I can, and I'm humbled every day that I've been chosen to do this kind of work, and I do teach it as well. So, all right. Thank you very much.
Hey, thank you, brother. I love you. And
love you too.
Talk soon.
All right. Take care.
Yeah.